by accident could awaken a hidden past, unravel an ancient secret, and shake an empire to its core. He was just a mechanic. She was a mystery, lost to time. But the moment he said her true name, everything changed. Power stirred, memories returned, and a forgotten air rose from silence. This isn't just a story, it's the moment a whisper became a revolution. If you are new here, then please subscribe this channel and show thumbs up by liking the video. Now let's move to this wonderful story. Talon never imagined his life would take such a strange turn. He was a simple space technician, born on a quiet moon orbiting Earth, and he spent most of his days repairing old freighters and patching holes in cargo ships. Nothing about his life was special. He worked hard, kept to himself, and only traveled when the job demanded it. So when a glowing silver invitation appeared on his dusty workbench one morning, he thought it was a mistake. The message was brief but formal. You are cordially invited to the royal gathering of the Volari Dominion. Your presence is requested. He almost threw it away, assuming it was some kind of joke, but the card shimmered with a soft pulse, and the coordinates matched a location he had only heard about in rumors, a floating city called Mireia, known to be the heart of the Volari royal family. Talon had never met anyone from the Dominion, but a memory stirred in his mind. Just a week earlier, he had responded to a distress signal from a sleek silver cruiser trapped near a collapsed star. He didn't ask for payment. He didn't even get a name. He just fixed their ship and moved on. He didn't expect to be noticed. Yet now he was being summoned to one of the most private events in the galaxy. When he arrived at Mireia, he felt like a speck of dust among giants. The city floated in the upper atmosphere of a blue gas giant, held in place by ancient gravity anchors. The towers sparkled like ice under the soft purple sky. The streets buzzed with alien languages and light-footed guards in flowing armor. Talon's ship was taken by royal hands, and he was led through tall halls lit by soft crystals and endless murals. Everything around him whispered history, power, and mystery. Inside the grand hall, he stood quietly near a crystal fountain, holding a glass of something blue and unfamiliar. Alien nobles from across star systems moved around him, dressed in glowing silks and jeweled robes. They laughed behind silver masks, danced to gentle music, and shared secrets in languages Talon couldn't understand. Some gave him curious looks, others seemed to ignore him completely. He didn't blame them. He didn't belong here. He wore a plain dark jacket, his boots still dusty from landing, and he kept to the shadows, feeling out of place. Then she walked in, and the air changed. Her name was Sevia, though he didn't know that yet. She moved through the crowd like gravity bent toward her. Her skin was a soft silver blue that shimmered in the golden light, and her long white hair was braided with glowing strands that pulsed with a rhythm he couldn't place. Her eyes scanned the room like they already knew what to look for. Then they found him. She walked straight to Talon and smiled, as if she had been waiting for this moment all along. You must be the human, she said. Talon blinked, trying to read her tone. Her voice was calm but powerful, like a river flowing under still ice. He nodded. Yeah, I guess I am. She laughed, and it was a sound unlike anything he had ever heard. Musical, warm, and a little sad. I'm Sevilla. Tell me, have you ever played the game of names? The what? It's a simple thing, she said, stepping a little closer. If you guess my true name, I am yours. Talon raised an eyebrow. What happens if I guess wrong? Nothing, she said with a tilt of her head. It's just a game, old and silly. The nearby nobles turned their heads toward them. Some laughed softly, others looked uncomfortable. Talon studied her face. She was beautiful, yes, but there was something hidden in her smile, a sadness, a weight, like she had been carrying something heavy for a very long time. All right, he said. I'll try, but I want to know how many guesses I get. Only one. That made the room go quiet. The music still played, but it felt distant, faded. The crowd leaned in just slightly, pretending not to listen. Talon took a slow breath and looked at her. Not just at her face, but at how she stood, How her fingers trembled for a second, how her eyes flickered toward the fountain behind him. And then, a name came to him. Not a word he had ever spoken before, not from any language he knew. It just appeared, like a whisper from some forgotten place. "Is your name Amarel?" The room froze. A glass dropped somewhere in the hall and shattered. The lights above flickered and dimmed. The music stopped mid-note. All eyes turned to them. Sevia's smile vanished, her eyes went wide. Her body shook and she fell, her head hitting the marble floor with a soft thud. Panic followed. Guards appeared from nowhere. Some nobles screamed, others fled. Talon dropped his glass and took a step forward, but before he could reach her, weapons were pointed at his chest. "Step away," a guard shouted. "I didn't do anything," Talon said, hands raised. "She asked me to guess. You spoke the sealed name," the guard interrupted. "How do you know it?" "I don't. I just guessed." But no one listened. They were afraid, not of him, but of the name, of what it meant, of what it woke. Talon woke up in a small, cold room with a dull pain in the back of his neck. The walls were smooth and gray, and the only light came from a single glowing panel above him. His hands were locked behind his back with cold metal cuffs. He tried to remember what had happened, but everything felt like a blur. He remembered the name, Amarel. He remembered Sevia falling, and then the guards, the fear in their eyes, the weapons, the silence that swallowed the whole room. Now he was here, alone, and unsure if he had just made the biggest mistake of his life. Outside the glass door of his cell, 2 guards stood like statues. They didn't move. They didn't speak. But Talon could hear a soft whispering, just barely. One guard leaned toward the other and said, "The prophecy?" The second replied, "They say the name was sealed for a reason, and now the seal is broken." Talon felt a chill crawl up his spine. What prophecy? What seal? He had no answers, only questions. And worst of all, he wasn't sure if he wanted to know what he had really said. Hours passed. No one came. He sat with his back against the wall, trying to calm his breathing. He thought about leaving Earth years ago, just to escape the noise of his old life. He thought of quiet nights in small stations, where the stars were the only things that made sense. But now, not even the stars felt safe. Eventually, the door hissed open and 2 figures stepped into the room. One was a tall woman in dark armor. Her skin was a pale green and her eyes glowed faintly blue. Her face was hard and unreadable like stone. The other was an older man, wrapped in a deep purple cloak that dragged across the floor. He moved, slowly but gracefully, as if time didn't touch him. The woman didn't speak. She just stared at Talon, watching him like he was some strange animal in a cage. The older man knelt beside him. His voice was soft, almost kind. "You are the one who spoke the name," he said. Talon nodded slowly. "I didn't mean anything by it. She asked me to guess," the woman scoffed. "You guessed that name by accident?" "I don't even know what it means," Talon said. "I don't know where it came from. It just came." The old man looked at him carefully, then stood up. "That name hasn't been spoken in 900 years, he said. "It was erased from all records, cut from memory. Even the stars were warned not to sing it." Talon frowned. "How do you erase a name from memory?" "You don't," the woman said coldly. "Not unless it's cursed. Not unless it's dangerous." The man nodded. Amarel was the name of the Empress's first daughter, a child, born not through tradition but through rebellion. She was hidden, locked away, bound by oath. They say she had a power the Empire could not control. Talon felt a cold wave pass through him. "And Sevia, is she that daughter?" "She should not be," the woman answered sharply. "That name was sealed, forgotten. The one who speaks it becomes marked. The one who hears it begins to awaken." The old man leaned closer. "Do you know what that means, human?" Talon shook his head slowly. "No. It means you are now part of the curse," the man said. "And she is no longer asleep." Far, below the palace in a hidden chamber wrapped in silence and crystal light, Sevia lay on a silver bed. Her eyes were open but unfocused, her lips moving as if whispering a dream. Priests and royal scientists stood around her, speaking in hushed voices. No one dared touch her. Inside her mind, something had changed. Visions swirled through her like wind through forgotten ruins, faces she didn't know, voices she'd never heard, fire, chains, and a girl who once shouted at a queen. Her heart beat faster, not with fear, but with memory. The Empress entered the chamber. Her presence quieted even the air. She looked down at Sevia, and for a moment her mask of power cracked. She whispered, "I told them your name would be forgotten, but now I see the curse was never yours. It was mine." Back in his cell, Talon was taken to another room. This one was larger, filled with strange machines and glowing panels. In the center stood a chair with silver restraints. The guards pushed him into it. The old man stood nearby. "This device," he said, "will scan your memory. If someone, place the name inside your mind, we will find out. If you resist, it may damage your thoughts." Talon gave a shaky smile. "No pressure, right?" The scan began. Images flew across the screen. Talon's childhood, his time working in dusty hangars, the long nights spent alone in ships drifting through space. Then something strange appeared. A girl standing in a field of broken towers. She turned to him, eyes full of sadness. It was Sevia, but not the one he met at the gala. This version wore no mask, no glow, just pain. The old man gasped. These are not your memories." The machine shut down with a hum. Talon sat there, breathing hard, trying to understand what he had just seen. "What's happening to me?" he asked. The old man looked truly worried for the first time. "I believe the prophecy is real." Talon blinked. "What prophecy?" Before he could answer, the woman returned. Her voice was tight with control. "Long ago, it was said that a soul from another world would speak the true name of the forgotten heir. In doing so, the silence would be broken." She paused, her eyes locked onto his. "You are that soul, Talon, and now the Empress will not let that go unpunished." Talon felt the weight of her words. He had been pulled into something far greater than he ever imagined, and now there was no going back. Talon sat quietly in his cell, watching the soft glow of the ceiling pulse like a slow heartbeat. Days had passed since the scan, but no one had returned to question him. He wasn't sure if that meant he was being forgotten, or studied even more closely from behind unseen walls. The guards outside no longer looked at him with anger or fear. Now they kept their distance, whispering only when they thought he couldn't hear. He had become something else to them, not just a prisoner, something more. Something dangerous. The silence around him grew heavy. But it wasn't empty. Inside his own mind, strange thoughts stirred like echoes. He began to see things when he closed his eyes. Not dreams, not memories, but pieces of something else. Moments that didn't belong to him. A hand reaching through flames. A voice crying, out in pain. A silver crown falling into dust. None of it made sense, but it felt real, as if another life was waking up inside him. Late one night, the cell door opened again, but this time it wasn't a guard or a royal official. A short figure entered, cloaked in dull robes. Her skin was dark and smooth like stone polished by wind, and her eyes glowed like gold coins. She moved calmly, as if she knew the halls better than the guards themselves. Talon sat up, unsure if he should speak. "You're awake," she said simply, as if they'd known each other for years. "I've been awake," Talon muttered. She didn't smile. Instead, she sat cross-legged on the floor in front of him. "Do you know what you are?" "I'm human," he said. "I fix ships. I try not to get involved in things like this." She tilted her head. "That's what you do, not what you are." Talon frowned. "Who are you?" "My name is Neriel. she said. I once served the Empress. I used to believe in the Empire, in its rules, its silence. But then I saw what they were hiding. Talon leaned forward. Sevia? Neriel nodded. Her real name is Amarel. She was the Empress's first daughter, born with something the Empire feared. A voice that couldn't be controlled. Power that couldn't be silenced. So they buried her not in death but in forgetfulness. They locked her identity behind a false name, erased all traces, and waited for time to wash her away. But it didn't, Talon said. No, Neriel replied softly. Because a voice like hers doesn't disappear. It waits. It hides in blood, in memory, in stories told beneath the stars. And someone like you, someone with no ties to the Empire, was chosen to carry her name. You're a speaker, a memory carrier. Talon ran a hand through his hair. I didn't choose any of this. I didn't ask for her name to show up in my mind. Some memories aren't passed by choice, she said. They pass like seeds in the wind, through time, through generations, through pain. You were always meant to find her. Talon looked at the floor. Then what do I do now? They want to punish me. Maybe worse. There's a group, Neriel said, her voice low. Old houses, silenced for centuries by the Empress. They believe Amarel should return. Not to take the throne, but to end the silence that's suffocating the stars. They believe you are the key to her awakening. Why me? Talon asked. I'm no one. You're someone who remembered what no one else could, she said. You're someone who saw her not just for what she was, but who she is. Outside the palace, unrest had begun to stir. Whispers of the name were already spreading. Traitors spoke of a human who broke the silence. Some believed it was a lie. Others thought it was a sign. A movement began to grow, not of war, but of hope. People who had lost their names, their homes, their voices. They looked to the story of Amarel, like a spark in the dark. In a quiet chamber deep beneath the city, Sevia stirred in her sleep. Her eyes fluttered. Her hands moved across the sheets like they were searching for something. Inside her mind, the name echoed like music through an empty hall. Amarel. It wasn't just a name. It was a door. A thread pulling her toward memories she had never been allowed to hold. She saw herself as a child, running through gardens lit by twin moons. She heard her mother's voice, loving at first, then cold and commanding. She remembered the moment her identity was taken from her, sealed away with ancient words. And through it all, she heard Talon's voice, speaking the name like a truth no one else dared to say. She whispered his name in return, her voice lost to the air. Back in his cell, Talon began to feel something deep in his chest, like a weight slowly shifting. Not pain, not fear. Something older. A connection. He didn't know if it was love, or fate, or just a strange pull between two forgotten souls. But it was real. Neriel stood to leave. They'll move you soon, somewhere more hidden, somewhere harder to reach. When they do, hold on to her name. It's your anchor, and hers. Talon nodded. What happens next? Neriel looked over her shoulder. Next comes the choice, and not just yours. As she slipped back into the shadows of the corridor, Talon sat alone again. But the silence no longer felt empty. It felt alive, like a voice waiting to be heard. And somewhere in the heart of the palace, Amarel was beginning to remember who she truly was. Talon stood in the center of a quiet chamber, his hands no longer bound, but his fate still uncertain. The walls around him pulsed with soft blue light, and strange machines clicked gently in the background. He had been moved again, this time to a cleaner, quieter place, high above the gas giant. The guards no longer shouted orders or pointed weapons. They simply watched him from behind glass, unsure if they were guarding a prisoner or a prophecy. He could feel the shift in the air. Something had changed, and it had started with a single word. A name. Amarel. He spoke it once, not knowing what it meant. But now he felt it in his chest like a heartbeat, not just a word but a key, a connection, a song buried under silence. The name had not only awakened Sevia, but had also stirred something across the Dominion. Talon had heard it in the whispers of the guards. He had seen it in their eyes, fear, yes, but also hope. Hope that the silence was ending. Sevia, no, Amarel, was fully awake now. Her memories had returned like waves crashing over broken shores. She remembered her childhood, her exile, the pain of being forgotten, and she remembered Talon. Not just his voice, but something deeper. She felt drawn to him in a way she couldn't explain. Their bond wasn't born of romance or fate, it was made of truth, the truth they both carried, whether they wanted it or not. That day, Talon was brought before the High Court of the Valari, Dominion. Not as a guest, not as a traitor, but as something in between. The royal chamber was shaped like a star with tall windows showing the planet's swirling clouds below. At the far end, on a raised platform, sat the Empress. She wore a silver crown and a mask of calm, but her eyes told another story. She had aged since Sevia's awakening. The weight of years she had hidden now pressed down on her like stone. The room was full of nobles, scholars, and guards, all silent, all watching. Talon stepped forward when called. He didn't know what to say. He only knew he had to speak from the heart. He looked at the Empress and said, "I didn't come here to break anything. I just said a name." She asked me to guess, and I did. I didn't know it would change everything. The Empress leaned forward. And yet it did. Talon nodded. Because she wasn't meant to be forgotten. You can't bury someone's truth forever. It comes back. Always. There was a long silence. Then soft footsteps echoed in the chamber. Sevia walked in, no longer wearing a mask. Her silver blue skin shimmered in the light, and her white hair moved gently with every step. She stood beside Talon without fear. The court watched, stunned, as the Empress rose to her feet. "You remember who you are," the Empress said. Sevia's voice was steady. "I do. I remember the name you sealed. I remember the power you feared. But I also remember love. I remember wanting to choose my own path." The Empress looked at her daughter, pain flickering across her face. "I was trying to protect you, from the council, from the war, from yourself." "You were protecting the throne," Sevia replied. "Not me." Talon felt the tension in the room rise like a storm, but he stepped forward, his voice calm. "This doesn't have to end in anger. The name was never a weapon. It's a bridge, between what was lost and what could be." The Empress looked at him, eyes softening for the first time. "And what do you suggest, human?" Talon glanced at Sevia, then back at the Empress. "Let her choose, not as a ruler, not as a rebel, just as herself. Let the people see her. Let the silence end." The Empress closed her eyes. For a long time, no one spoke. Then she removed her crown and placed it gently on the stand beside her. Then let the silence end. The court erupted, not in chaos, but in whispers of relief. The name had been spoken, the truth revealed, and no war followed. Instead, the empire took its first quiet step toward healing. Sevia chose not to take the throne. She walked away from it, choosing instead to travel across the Dominion, meeting the forgotten people, the silenced voices. She used her power not to rule, but to restore, to listen, to remember. And wherever she went, she was called by her true name, Amarel. Talon returned to his small ship, back to the quiet corners of space. But he wasn't the same man. He had once believed he was no one, just a mechanic. But now he knew the power of words, of names, of memory. In a small act, in a simple moment, he had helped bring light to a place that had lived in shadow for too long. Sometimes he dreamed of her, not as a princess or a symbol, but as a friend. In one dream, they stood in a field of red grass, laughing under a twin sun sky. In another, she stood beside him as the stars sang a name only they remembered. Amarel. One day, in a quiet orbit above a forgotten moon, Talon released a small drone into the sky. It shimmered with tiny lights and moved across the darkness, tracing a name in the stars. He smiled as he watched it. The silence was broken. The name was free. And somewhere, among the stars, a girl who had once been forgotten was writing her own story at last.